Good morning. I'm delighted to join you today. This morning's parable is the parable of the weeds. It's Matthew 13, 24 to 30, and it's from the Passion Translation. Then Jesus taught them another parable. Heaven's kingdom realm can be compared to a farmer who planted good seed in his field. But at night, when everyone was asleep, an enemy came and planted poisonous weeds among the wheat and ran away. When the wheat sprouted and bore grain, the weeds also appeared. So the farmer's hired hands came to him and said, "Sir, wasn't that good seed you sowed in the field? Where did all these weeds come from?" He answered, "This has to be the work of the enemy." They replied, "Do you want us to go and gather up all the weeds?" "No," he said, "if you pull out the weeds, you might uproot the wheat at the same time. You must allow them both to grow together until the time of the harvest. At that time, I'll tell my harvesters to make sure they gather the weeds first and tie them all in bundles to be burned. Then they will harvest the wheat and put it into my barn." When I first read this, I thought, golly, I don't know what it means. And then I did what I always do when I'm not sure about what something means. I got curious and I asked questions. Why did Matthew write this down? Why, out of all the things Jesus said, did he choose to keep this parable and write this passage to these people at this time? And why did Jesus, a Jew, a carpenter who hung out with fishermen, why was he telling stories of farming and crops? And his stories, his parables, I think they're meant to irritate us. They're meant to question us. They're meant for us to go, what did that mean? And consider not only the story and the people in it, but consider its message for those people as well as for us. So I looked at it and I thought, well, first century Jews in the Middle East lived in a farming culture. And possibly when one farmer wanted to sabotage another, they might plant durnal, a type of bearded weed, in amongst the other farmer's rooted plants. And that mimics the characteristics of wheat, but it's not wheat. What are those imposters and why are they there? And why didn't the farmer want to just uproot them immediately? Why did he want to wait? And I thought about waiting then. Waiting, what does waiting mean? What does waiting mean when there is good and bad? What does it mean to me? How do I deal with imperfection in myself? What is good enough? How do I remember that I am God's very good idea, fearfully and wonderfully loved and made, pleasing and outrageously loved? And that's for you too. You are God's very good idea. You're pleasing to him. You're outrageously loved. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. You are the apple of God's eye. So I wondered then, do we treat ourselves with the same grace that God treats us with? When we do something wrong, do we immediately go to beating ourselves up and getting angry that we haven't been perfect or that someone else hasn't been perfect? Or do we show grace to ourselves and to that other people? Do we remember that humans aren't perfect and that we need to let God help us? We need to recognize our humanity and our limits and say sorry quickly and have grace and forgiveness in all we do. It made me also think about this sense of competition with others. Rather than competing, are we not saying, I celebrate your success? And that's something I absolutely love to do. When something goes well for someone else, I want to celebrate them, to celebrate their success, because heaven is a rich place, full of love for us. And I know that God loves to shower his children with love, to pour his grace upon them. So I want to celebrate the success of the others, to say, well done. And in that, know that I'm not missing out just because they've got something. Because God has so much for me, like he has so much for you. So I hope today that you will treat yourself with the grace and love that God has for you. You are outrageously loved, the apple of God's eye.